Morning, really busy show, and our main news story is that drug possession, theft and shoplifting are among the crimes for which first-time offenders could receive a caution in future rather than being sent to court. That's under a new code of practice published today by the Ministry of Justice.
The guidance also makes it clear that police will no longer be able to use cautions for a range of more serious offences, such as carrying a knife or firearm, to ensure those offenders are prosecuted. Our political correspondent, Louisa James, is in Westminster. Louisa, the government says it wants to make the system clearer and fairer. Obviously, as well, the prisons are under pressure. Is that part of the motivation?
Well, interestingly, it is not something that is mentioned on this government announcement today, that huge court backlog and overcrowded prisons. What the government is saying is that the idea behind this is to give police clearer guidance. So essentially they would be given a list of crimes where they could use a caution instead of a prosecution, and that is believed to include things, as you say, like shoplifting, theft, drug possession, criminal damage and assault. That would only apply to first-time offenders. They would have to admit to their crimes, they would have to agree to things like rehabilitation and community service, and it would not apply to more serious offences like carrying a knife or drug dealing. And ministers say that it would allow what they call low-level criminality to be nipped in the bud, as they put it, and victims to see justice. Critics, though, have said that it sends the wrong message, that if offenders aren't punished from the start, it could encourage them to continue committing crimes. And yes, there is another factor here which, as I say, the government hasn't mentioned, but it's an obvious consequence of this, and that is that fewer cases would go to court. And you only have to look at the numbers to see how overwhelmed the current system is, with a backlog of more than 340,000 cases in the Magistrates' Court, more than 62,000 in the Crown Courts. Not enough room in prisons either. The government predicting the number of people on remand will exceed 89,000 this November, but with only 87,500 spaces available, that would mean a shortfall, and Labour say that that risks serious offenders either not being sent to prison or being released early.
First-time criminals to avoid a court. The government saying today that first-time convictions should generally be a caution rather than going into the criminal justice system unless it's a more serious offence. I have to say, from a criminal justice point of view, this actually makes complete sense, because you don't want to criminalise people at the start, give people a chance before things get serious. But, Harry, is this driven by good criminal justice policy, or is this driven by a government under a lot of pressure because the courts have got huge backlogs, the prisons are full, and, you know,
I was just going to say,
think about it.
If Keir Starmer or Yvette Cooper had announced this policy, you'd be having the Tories going absolutely bananas, saying they're soft on crime. But what it is true. It is a total acceptance that the backlogs from COVID in the courts, and the courts were already in a pretty shoddy state pre-pandemic. The pandemic exacerbated that, made it horrific. You know, it could take months and years to anything to get to court. This is a hefty bit of topspin, I'd say, from the government. They're accepting the fact that they're just going to have to clear out some minor, lower-end crimes. They're going to have to take the brickbats on that. They're going to have to take the soft on crime allegations in the political world. But yeah, as Ed says, when you drill down into the details, should you really be criminalising someone, sending someone down for shoplifting in court, when actually that can be dealt in a different way? Also, the various different sort of guidance schemes for cautioning are a bit of a mess, frankly. There are lots of different police forces have different rules. Actually, streamlining them is a good idea, totally, but let's not get away from the fact that our criminal justice system is in chaos and the backlogs are going to take years to overcome, and this is going to chip away at it, a tiny bit of it.
Is it a pragmatic approach, Kevin? You know, we've got serious offenders who've done serious crimes, who need time in court for judgment to be meted out one way or the other. And this is a pragmatic approach to, in a sense, whichever way you look at it, sidestep our normal process and just offer the caution straight away.
I think it's pragmatic when the system is in chaos.
Yeah.
And the cuts in the David Cameron, George Osborne era in criminal justice were madness, utter madness. But I also think it's the right approach in that first-time offenders, for those crimes, what they fear most is being caught. And I think dragging them through into a magistrate's court where, you know, 9 months down the line and they might get a 2-minute hearing and a £120 fine isn't really worth all that effort.
cash.
No,
Money.
it's just not. It's just not. And look, this is largely happening around the country anyway. They're just trying to codify what is going on. In the truth, in Britain, I think we're now living in not soft justice, there's no justice, because those figures showing that 19 in 20 crimes don't result in a conviction. Yeah, and it is, was it 5.4% of crimes result in, that's around 19 in every 20 crimes don't result in a conviction.
Yeah.
So why chase shoplifters all the way through the system and treat them almost as if they're the same as murderers and rapists? You've got to go right through the system. Because it's nonsense. You want interventions. You want to stop people committing crimes in the first place. I think the best ever soundbite was "Tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime" by Tony Blair. You want to stop people getting into crime in the first
Invented by Gordon Brown.
Yeah, yes, it was. It was.
Just saying.
It was.
But
it's the right approach, isn't it? Look, if I remember somebody smashed my car window and tried to nick me radio. I mean, putting them in the stocks for a week wouldn't have been good enough. But at the end of the day, it wouldn't have been the right way to approach it. And I think we've got to stop people getting into crime in the first place, and then really deal with a heavy end